Oh, they got you where? Here's here.
Okay, I call the October 14th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting to order. Would you please join me in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Abbott?
Present.
Commissioner Alexander?
Here.
Commissioner Gillette?
Here.
Commissioner Kelly? Commissioner Morse?
Here.
Commissioner Martin?
Here.
Commissioner Meal?
Here.
Commissioner Walker?
Here.
And Commissioner Jacks.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Automated announcement, please.
Anyone who has not signed in, please do so at the table located in the lobby. Should anyone wish to speak, please complete a request to speak form, which is also located on the lobby table next to the sign-in sheet. A request to speak form must be completed for each item you would like to speak on. Please note, there are stairs on the right, left, and center aisles, and we ask that you use caution when using the stairs. There is also a ramp located to the audience's left. If anyone has written comments, exhibits, petitions, photos, or letters they intend to present at today's meeting, have 17 copies and give them to a staff member at the back of the auditorium. Staff member, please hold up your hand for the audience. If you do not have 17 copies, you may use the overhead camera to present your documents. Please place your documents on the podium and line it up with the arrows indicated. If you want your documentation to go on record, you must hand them to the clerk after your presentation with the agenda item number clearly marked on the documentation. Members of the public cannot speak to staff members that are seated at the tables with microphones during the meeting. If you have questions, please see the staff member located in the back of the auditorium. All speakers will be limited to 2 minutes to make their presentation statements. Everyone, please turn off all cell phones or place them on vibrate during the meeting. If you must take a call, please leave the meeting area and go outside to have your conversation. We also ask the audience to refrain from talking with one another during the presentations and discussions. Today, the Planning and Zoning Commission will hear public testimony and then forward a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Everyone attending the meeting is asked to remember that the administrative building and campus are tobacco-free areas, which means no smoking is allowed from curb to curb. No food or drinks are allowed in the auditorium except for bottled water. If there are any items remaining on the agenda, the commission will break for lunch for 1 hour per the chairman's discretion.
Has left the conference.
Okay, item number 5, need a motion to approve the meeting minutes from September 9th, 2020.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Have a motion by Commissioner Walker
I'll second the motion.
and a second by Commissioner Alexander. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. As we get ready for item 1, since we have 3 commissioners on the phone today, when it comes to questions, I'll ask them individually if they have questions, and then open it up in general for the commissioners that are here in person. Okay, ready for item 1.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commission. Item number 1 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 402-15003 from an RE 10A residential recreation with a 10-acre minimum lot size zone to an AR 2A agricultural residential with a 2-acre minimum lot size zone to allow for a minor land division in the scenic vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Okay. Are the applicants present today? Yes? No, I don't believe they are. Ask if our commissioners have any questions. Commissioner Morris? Commissioner Martin?
No questions.
Commissioner Abbott? Okay, any questions from our commissioners that are present today?
No questions.
No questions. Okay. I'm calling for a motion on item 1.
I'll make a motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Motion by Commissioner Walker. Second?
Second.
Second by,
Mrs. Gillette.
yes, a second by Commissioner Gillette. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2.
Item number 2 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 402-13012 from an RE 10A residential recreation with a 10-acre minimum lot size zone to an AR agricultural residential zone to allow for a minor land division in the scenic vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Is the applicant present today? No? See if any of our commissioners have questions. Commissioner Morris? Commissioner Martin?
No questions.
Commissioner Abbott? Any questions from our commissioners present? No? Okay. Calling for a motion on item 2.
I'll move to approve item number 2 with the staff recommendations.
Motion by Commissioner Alexander. Looking for a second.
Second.
Motion and a second by Commissioner Martin. Oh my gosh. Gillette. Why am I having trouble with that? Motion by Alexander and a second by Commissioner Gillette. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3A.
Item 3A is an evaluation of a request for an amendment to the Mojave County General Plan and an amendment to the Golden Valley Area Plan from an LR low-density residential land use designation to a GC general commercial land use designation for assessor's parcel number 305-06-146 in the Golden Valley vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Is the applicant present? Any comments for us?
I'm here to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Applicant is present and ready to ask questions should they arise. Polling our commissioners, Commissioner Morris, Commissioner Martin,
No questions.
and Commissioner Abbott. Those present, any questions? No. Okay, we'll now entertain a motion for item 3A.
I make a motion of approval for item 3A with staff recommendations.
Commissioner Gillette, motion. And we have a second by Commissioner Walker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3B.
Item 3B is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 30506-146 from an AR agricultural residential zone to a C2H highway commercial zone to allow for a commercial retail business in the Golden Valley vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
And the applicant is not present, so we'll move on with questions.
Oh, no.
I'm sorry? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, you are. Same idea, if you have any questions? Okay, thank you, I'm sorry. All right, so the applicant is available for questions, starting with Commissioner Morris. Commissioner Martin?
No questions.
Commissioner Abbott? And those here?
No questions.
No. Okay, looking for a motion for item 3B.
I'll make a motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Motion by Commissioner Walker, second.
I'll second.
Commissioner by, second by Commissioner Gillette. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item 4A.
Item number 4A is an evaluation of a request for an amendment to the Mojave County General Plan from an LR, low-density residential land use designation, to a GC, general commercial land Use for assessor's parcel number 324-12132A in the Kingman vicinity. This amendment to the general plan is to allow for a rezone for a storage facility. This item was originally heard at the September 9th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission, and at the owner's request, this item was continued to allow time for the property owner and applicant to meet with the surrounding property owners to discuss and address concerns about the proposed development. For this item, we've received one letter in opposition with 2 responses from the property owner. We've received 1 petition in opposition, 1 letter in support, and then we received 1 letter as a summary of the neighborhood meeting that was held. Staff recommends approval.
Is the applicant present? Please come forward. Thank you.
Good morning, Honorable Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Kathy Tackett Hicks. I'm acting as the owner's agent. There was also 2 additional, letters of support that came in after I gave out my tailgate notice, and they are in the packet. So last time I asked for this to be tabled because I was surprised at the petition that came through. I did reach out to all of them. I gave a little update to you guys. And I don't believe that there's anything substantial there. 2 people did show up. They had a concern about access, and they wanted it off of Diagonal, which we're in agreement with. And they also did not want a 2-story storage facility, which the owner is fine with. And they wanted to make sure there was not lighting that would overflow onto their lots. So when you have the storage units, those lights are all focused down, so that's not a problem. The only reason I asked it to be tabled is that petition came in at the last minute, and I did want to make sure there was nothing fundamentally wrong, and there is nothing fundamentally wrong. This is a good proposal. We're in agreement with staff recommendations, and I'd ask that you please approve it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll check on that now. Commissioner Morris? Commissioner Martin, any questions? Commissioner Morris, any questions?
Yeah, no, just a comment. Just a great job in trying to mitigate concerns that we up, including the issue, the lighting issue.
Oops.
I think we're having difficulties today there with that. Commissioner Martin, any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Abbott, any questions? Commissioner Martin, are you back? Or, I'm sorry, Commissioner Morris, are you back? No? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. You were cut off there by the phone, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just basic thank Ms. Hicks to mitigate neighbor concerns over the height, the lighting issue, and the access.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from commissioners present? No questions?
Thank
okay,
you.
Thank you, Kathy. Calling for a motion for item 4A.
I'll move to
I would move we.
Have a motion by Commissioner Morris. Looking for a second.
I'll second.
And a second by Commissioner Alexander. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 4B.
Item number 4B is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 324-12132A from an R1 1A single-family residential 1 acre minimum lot size zone to a C2 general commercial zone to allow for a storage facility in the Kingman vicinity. Just like the previous item, this item was initially heard at the September 9th, 2020 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and the same letters for 4A apply to 4B. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Applicant is present. Have any other comments at this point? Okay. Is available for questions. Should there be any questions?
Chair.
Yes, please.
I assume that there have, on these items that we're going through, that there have been no slips provided by the audience to.
There have not.
But as a matter of course, we should ask if there's any public comments.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any public comment on this item, 4B? No? Okay. Looking for questions. Commissioner Morris, any question?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Martin?
No questions.
Commissioner Abbott? Okay, are commissioners present? No. Looking for a motion for item 4B.
I'll make a motion to approve item 4B with the staff recommendations.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Alexander, second by Commissioner Gillette. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 5A.
Item number 5A is an evaluation of a request for an extension of time for Board of Supervisors Resolution number 2010-230 as amended by Board of Supervisors Resolution numbers 2012-021, 2014-164, 2016-058, and 2018-105, setting forth a major amendment to the Mojave County General Plan for a solar plant and related uses in the Sterling vicinity. This will be the third extension of time. This extension of time will allow the applicant additional time to complete the NEPA and WAPA permitting process as required by BOS Resolution number 2014-164. The applicant anticipates satisfying all outstanding conditions in 2 years. The environmental assessment is the last step to obtain NEPA compliance approval, a 2 to 3 year process, and was given as the reason for the delay. The applicant notes that with an additional 2 years, they will be able to obtain the proper compliance and will then be ready to apply for the necessary permits for construction. As a note, the county has received a version of the environmental assessment to provide comment, and the Board of Supervisors provided a letter of support for the continued processing and approval necessary for the project dated August 3rd, 2020. We have received one letter in opposition to this item. Staff recommends approval that the extension of time will remain in effect until November 2nd, 2022.
Thank you. Is the applicant present? Applicant is not present. We do have a slip for this particular item. Mr. Charles D. Shazer, you come forward, please, sir.
Good morning. My name is Charles DeShazer. I live at 8778 Polaris Road. I'm just here to recommend that you approve for recommendation on this project because it would be greatly helpful for me because Polaris Road currently has no legal access, and the anticipated project would put in pavement to within a couple of miles of my house instead of 8 miles from my house to the pavement right now. The other thing that I'd like, that's for A, B, and C of 5 is what I'd like to speak on. The other thing is on these zoning notices, you have the wrong number on this particular notice that was placed out in the desert, and is there anything that can be done about removing these notices in a timely manner? Because I've been picking up for years the zoning notices and Board of Supervisor notices as much as 6 weeks, 8 weeks after the meetings have taken place, and they just blow all over the desert and make it quite a mess out there. Like, you know, the people that are dumping in the desert is effectively the Mojave County people putting these signs out. That's about all I had, if you had any questions for me.
Okay, thank you. I noticed the staff took notes on your comments. I appreciate it. Do we have any, I'm sorry. Do we have any other individuals wishing to speak on this item? I'll ask if we have any questions from our commissioners. Commissioner Morris?
No questions.
Commissioner Martin?
No question.
Commissioner Abbott? Any comments from our...
I have a question. And get basically from lack of information for staff. This property, is it the one in, as such, down in Topak? Or what was known as Topak?
Commissioner Jack, or Commissioner Meal, yes, that is correct. It's down near Topak.
That's it. I didn't realize it's been going on that long.
Yeah.
Forever.
Any other questions? Okay, entertain a motion for item 5A.
I make a motion that the board approve item 5A with staff recommendations.
Motion by, okay, I got a motion by Commissioner Gillette and a second by Commissioner Meal. All those in favor say aye.
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 I was
I was saying, wait a minute.
Oh my gosh, I'm not having a good day. Let me clarify that for the record. So we have a motion by Commissioner Walker and we have a second by Commissioner Gillette.
I have a question on that.
It's reversed. A motion by Commissioner Gillette and a second by Commissioner Walker.
I have a question on that. Can we put a time limit? This thing's been going on now for 9 years.
Seems like it's going to go into 2020.
That would be a question for staff.
The applicant requested 2 years for this extension of time, and so that's what we've done. I know that the permitting process going through NEPA and WAPA can be a very lengthy one, There's a lot of requirements and things that need to be done, especially the environmental assessment. It takes a lot of time, and so that's the reason that they've given for the delay. So the time limit on this one is the 2 years.
Okay.
Okay. Completes that item? Okay. So we have a motion by Commissioner Gillette, a second by Commissioner Walker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to item 5B.
Item number 5B is an evaluation of a request for an extension of time for Board of Supervisors Resolution number 2010-231, as amended by BOS Resolution numbers 2012-022, 2014-165, 2016-059, and 2018-106, setting forth a major amendment to the Sterling Area Plan and boundary expansion and adjustment between the Sterling Area Plan and the Desert Hills Fire District Area Plan for a solar power plant and related uses in the Sterling vicinity. Same as with the previous item, we have received one letter in opposition to this item. Staff recommends approval, and this extension of time will be in effect until November 2nd, 2022.
The applicant is not present. We did have a sign-up by Charles D. Shazer, who has given his comments for items A, B, and C, so he's good there. Do we have anybody else wishing to speak on this item? See if we have any questions. Commissioner Morris?
No questions.
Commissioner Martin?
No question.
Commissioner Abbott? Any commissions here on the panel? Any questions? No? Okay, Chair will call for a motion on item 5B.
I make a motion that the board approve item 5B with the standard board recommendations.
Okay. Second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Gillette, a second by Commissioner Meal. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item 5C.
Item number 5C is an evaluation of a request for an extension of time for Board of Supervisors Resolution number 2010-233, as amended by BOS Resolution numbers 2012-023, 2014-166, 2016-060, and 2018-107, setting forth a rezone to heavy manufacturing, to MX heavy manufacturing and ESP solar photovoltaic overlay zone for a solar power plant and related uses in the Sterling vicinity. As with the other two items, we have received one letter in opposition. Staff recommends approval that this extension of time will be in effect until November 2nd, 2022.
The applicant is not present. We had one individual speaking on this issue, Charles D. Schaefer, who has already discussed his comments for 5A, 5B, and now 5C. Anyone else wishing to speak on 5C? No? See if we have any questions. Commissioner Morris?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Martin?
No question.
Commissioner Abbott? Any commissioners here present? No. Chair is now calling for a motion for item 5C.
I make a motion that the board approve item 5C with the staff recommendations.
Got a motion by Commissioner Gillette. Looking for a second?
I'll second.
A second by Commissioner Walker. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. brings us to item 6.
Item number 6 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 317-57011 from an AR 36A agricultural residential with a 36-acre minimum lot size zone to a CRE commercial recreation zone to allow for a gun range and recreational facility in the White Hills vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
Okay. The applicant is present. Any comments on this particular item?
Happy to answer questions.
Applicant is present and willing to ask or answer any questions on this particular item. Anyone else wishing to speak on item 6? Okay, with that, we'll see if we have any commissioner questions. Commissioner Morris?
I have no questions.
Commissioner Martin?
No questions.
Commissioner Abbott? Do we have any questions? Yes, Commissioner Alexander?
Yes, I have a question for the applicant. It may or may not be relative at this point in time, but I did note that they intend a gun range and a recreation facility, and yet there is water issues and that sort of thing. Do they have a plan to address that? It's more curiosity than anything.
Yeah, good morning, commissioners. Again, this is Kathy Tackett Hicks, acting as the owner's agent. And yeah, we do have a plan. And actually, for this particular site, I have already submitted a commercial site plan for it. And we had a pre-app meeting yesterday. Because it is isolated, it's a nice site because it butts up to the BLM for thousands of acres on the west. So it's really a nice location. We are proposing just a water hall and a restroom facility because there's proposed 3 bays. Excuse me, 3 bays for the shooting, and you don't need a lot of infrastructure, a restroom.
Right.
So just water hall to support that, and that'll use a septic or one of those completely set up units that you can just pull in and out, ADA accessible. We did just discuss that yesterday. Okay. So it's not a water user, a big water user at all.
Right.
So. But we do have a plan, and it's gone through preliminary, and I'll submit that
Great.
Final here.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Good. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Chair will now call for a motion on item 6. Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with staff recommendations.
Commissioner Walker makes a motion. Looking for a second.
I'll second.
Commissioner Gillette is a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 7.
Item number 7 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 20416-024 and 20416-025 from an AR 36A agricultural residential with a 36-acre minimum lot size zone to an AR 5A agricultural residential with a 5-acre minimum lot size zone to bring the properties into compliance in the Kingman vicinity. Staff recommends approval with standard conditions.
The applicant is present. Any comments on this item? The applicant is present and willing to answer any questions on this item. Anybody else wishing to speak on item 7? With that, we'll see if we have any commissioner questions. Commissioner Morris?
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Martin?
No questions.
Commissioner Abbott? Any questions from any of our other commissioners? No? Now looking for a motion on item 7.
I'll make a motion to approve item 7 according to the staff recommendations.
A motion by Commissioner Alexander, a second by Commissioner Gillette. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 8.
We lost you.
Item number 8 is an evaluation of a request for a rezone of assessor's parcel number 21029-001 from an RE residential recreation zone to a CSD commercial special development zone to allow for an RV park and boat and RV storage in the Topak vicinity. The commercial special development zone is something that typically deviates from our standard commercial zones. And so one of the conditions is that these properties will be rezoned to CSD, commercial special development, with allowed uses that are permitted in the CRE zone and with the allowed use of outdoor RV and boat storage. Staff recommends approval with that condition and then the standard conditions.
Thank you. Is the applicant present today? Do you have any comments at this point?
I have no comments on behalf of the applicant, but I'm prepared to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you. Applicant is present and is ready to answer any questions that commissioners may have. We have anyone else wanting to speak on item number 8? Okay. Looking for questions. Commissioner Morris?
No questions.
Commissioner Martin?
No question.
Commissioner Abbott? Any questions from any of our commissioners here? No? Chair will now call for a motion on item 8.
I make a motion that the board approve item 8 with the special recommendations as well as the standard recommendations.
Motion by Commissioner Gillette. Looking for a second?
Second.
A second by Commissioner Morris. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9.
They brought this letter, but the letter was already received in your packets already.
Item number 9 is an evaluation of Mojave County Ordinance number 2020-04, an ordinance replacing the Mojave County Ordinance number 2018-06, which adopted the building code to include local amendments that are more responsive to the building industry.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, my name is Gilbert Smavey. I'm the Chief Building Official. Just a little background, we haven't had any amendments or anything to your commission for quite a while, probably 2 or 3 years. As you're aware, we have a Building Code Advisory Board, which hears cases of appeal and also alternate materials and methods in regards to amending the Mojave County Building Code. So that's what's for us today. We had some cases come up to us, and actually we have 5 different items. First item was a recommendation from the board to basically address residential aircraft hangars. The current International Building Code has a restriction in regards to residential hangars to limit those to 2,000 square feet in size and 20 feet in height. The board heard on their August 26th, 2020 meeting, heard from the public and from staff, and basically made recommendations to increase those sizes to 3,000 square feet maximum size and 25 feet in maximum height. And staff concurs with that recommendation before you today. The other part of it was There's a definition in the building code which addresses residential hangars. There's also a item in the residential code that was put in by the Code Advisory Board several years ago. So we're cleaning house a little bit with a redefinition to increase those sizes. That's 1 and 2 items on the agenda. The other was amendment to the exemptions in the building code to not require building permits for block walls under 7 feet in height. Currently, our adjoining cities do not require that requirement. We've had it on the books for probably 15 years now, and it was staff's recommendation to take that off. So our recommendation is to exempt those up to 7 feet in height, and that actually brings in line the same exemption for other fences, and so walls and fences would be exempt up to 7 feet. Basically, we're doing some housekeeping. When we were doing amendments, we would always amend the back code. So we had the 2018-06 Mojave County Building Ordinance that had some amendments in those. We feel it as a better format to just basically repeal that ordinance and create the 2020-04 ordinance, which would incorporate these proposed amendments before you today, and also clean house and have a separate ordinance. So we're not going back into the last ordinances. So the most current, this would be the most current we'd be going by. And then last, number 5 on the list is just doing some formatting corrections within the ordinance. An example was we numbered all the amendments and all the requirements, and when we have to amend or change one of those, we have to renumber the entire ordinance. So we're actually removing those numbers and just taking those by code sections. And that's my staff report for you today.
Okay, thank you. We have 7 individuals that have signed up to speak on this item. Would ask that you keep your comments to 2 minutes and give your name and address when you come to the mic. Start with Mr. Chris Johnson.
Good morning, Commissioner. And I have a letter that I also included in the, Laura Skubal was able to include in the agenda package. It's at the back with photos of 2-story building in the air park. The current county requirements are 5,000 square feet for a detached hangar and 30 feet in height with R3 1-hour fire rating. Those are existing right now. They've been in place since, I believe, Mr. Smabby had mentioned a date in the last code meeting of 2005, and it's also in the, what he mentioned just now, the 2018-06. So what I'm asking is to retain, I'm okay with the reduction in the 5,000 to 3,000 square foot size, but I'd like to retain the 30-foot height requirement. That was not, the 2-story was not discussed, the requirement was not discussed in the code meeting on August 26th. The reason is that the first floor requires a clear span to contain the wingspan of the aircraft of approximately 40 to 43 feet. As you bring the span of the building out farther, it requires trusses above that first floor to carry the loads of the second story out to the perimeter foundation. As you get wider in wingspan, the trusses have to go deeper, if you will. So if you take, for instance, a 13 or 14 foot high interior height of a hangar plus 5 foot of trusses to carry the second story, plus 9 foot of the second story, plus another 8 foot for the roof, you're up to around 34, 35 feet. Oh, that's okay. When I watched the video, and I just spoke to Mr. Smabby earlier, the measurement point is from the midpoint of the peak down to the eaves. So with a 30-foot limit, we could reach R3 requirements and still have the building that's needed. And there are other buildings already on the air park, 2-story hangars that are similar, and that's in the photograph in the back of the proposed package. So my time's up, but I have more to talk about if you like.
We'll see if we have some questions for you.
All righty.
Commissioner Morris, any questions?
Yeah, the 30-foot or the 20. What was the reasoning behind that?
He's cutting out so bad.
Commissioner Morris, would you state that again? You were cut out.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to know, maybe Gilbert can help, is what the district or the Building Code Advisory Board recommended the 20 versus the 30 foot, because I know a lot of those units like to go with a second story or a utility room up there.
Exactly.
Staff, can you answer that?
Chairman, the height was looked at. Before the board was an application that had a 24-foot height requirement or a height proposal. And basically, I think the board and staff looked at that height on a single-story structure, and I believe that's what they looked at. I don't know if we ever discussed a two-story structure, but the code does limit the height of the hangar in the code. Instead of limiting a two-story structure, along those lines are that the size restriction is an exemption for residential structures. It doesn't prohibit the person from building something higher or outside of those parameters, but it does put firewalls in a requirement. So one would be if you don't meet the residential limitations or you exceed those limitations. One would be if you're less than 30 feet from a property line, you'd have to put a 2-hour firewall in. So there are fire requirements once you exceed those residential limitations. And that's all within a detailed occupancy in the International Building Code, which kind of gave an exemption for residential structures. I hope that answers your question.
Commissioner Morris?
Somewhat. I just wondered why it went from 30 to 20.
Commissioner, in 2005, the board amended a detached hangar up to 5,000 square feet and 30 feet in height. What we saw staff-wise is I don't believe anybody addressed setbacks from that structure. So the amendments that were proposed by the Code Advisory Committee was to reword the definition of a residential aircraft hangar, and so the detached portion basically was not going to be, it was amended out. So I guess the standard zoning setbacks would apply then. But being a detailed occupancy in the building code specifically addresses aircraft hangars and specifically addresses residential aircraft hangars, and those limitations were put in that code. There was some discussion of what's the difference between an aircraft hangar and a private garage. I think the board made those heard those recommendations and made their decision on the height and the area requirements.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Martin, any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Abbott? Commissioners, any questions? No. Okay, thank you much, Mr. Johnson. Appreciate it. Next item, next person to speak, Alan Yuck. Hawk.
Afternoon, good morning, morning still. I wanted to speak because I listened to the entire meeting when they discussed the changes that are proposed. And during that meeting, it was interesting that they had discussions about sizes, setbacks, and square footage. And there was a lot of discussion about it. And then suddenly there became a height issue. And the height issue was just thrown in without anyone prepared to discuss it or talk about it or look at any kind of results of these changes. And I was really surprised at that because I thought there was a whole lot of prep work that went into the square footage discussion. There was almost no prep work that went into the height discussion. And as you probably know, there's already a house with their master bedroom on top of their hangar. And I'm not sure if the height of the hangar is below that second story. And so it would be acceptable because the hangar height is a certain amount, but then there's a second story on top of the hangar. So the changes are unclear, and they were based on a discussion that just suddenly came up and there was a decision made, and it didn't seem to make much sense to me, especially in light of the fact that there's already a house built just like that. And I know of one case where somebody is going to submit plans to have the hangar built with an upper, like, office area for working from home. So my question is, why did we suddenly change the hangar height? And is there any valid reason for doing so, or is the hangar height below the second story?
Okay, any comments from the staff?
Mr. Chair, yes, the building code doesn't distinguish height or story. I mean, it distinguishes height, and it says the height of an aircraft hangar for residential purposes is limited to 20 feet in height. Again, the board felt that was restrictive and felt the square footage was restrictive, and they made a decision to increase the area to 3,000 square feet and the height to 25 feet in height. As for the other structures that are out there, there were, I believe, 7 hangars built when we were under the Uniform Building Code. And that was prior to, I believe, 2005 and the adoption of the international building codes. There was no restrictions on residential aircraft hangars in the prior codes. So we do have some, per se, grandfathered structures out there. Again, the height and the area were determined by the code boards to be reasonable for a residential hobby-type aircraft hangar on properties. Again, I think the discussion wasn't really about height in a lot of cases. It was about area, so I do agree with the speaker now. But again, the height, under the building codes right now, for the height, you can, even at 25 feet, you can get 2 stories. The question is how high is the hangar going to be? A lot of the hangars out there were proposed to be 16 and 18-foot ceiling heights, which in some cases, even the spokespeople of the aircraft industry said that's pretty extreme. So the reasonability is just of the 25 feet was that's a reasonable amount of height for an aircraft hangar.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Johnson, did you have a comment? You'd have to come up to the mic. And
I would dispute the 25-foot height requirement, even though it's at the mid-range. You need a little higher. As I spoke about the trusses and the width, I have drawings here that show a 33.5-foot height at the peak. If we went with 30 feet, you bring it down to the midpoint, we could fit with the midpoint measurement, you could fit with a 30-foot. And the existing county right now today is 30 feet, the county ordinance. So I'm asking that no change be made to the 30-foot height requirement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could ask a question of the applicant?
Yes.
What is the dimensions of the structure? Because when you start expanding over 40 feet in length, he's correct, the floor joists start getting very large. But again, this isn't a residential garage or a residential RV garage.
Right. You need approximately, for most general aviation aircraft, 40-foot wingspan. Some are longer, a little wider wingspan, 41. I believe at the meeting we talked about a Cessna 421. I believe Jim Lambert brought that up. I'm looking for a 43-foot overall outside wide width hangar with a 42-foot opening, bifold door, and I would like to have a minimum of 12-foot high inside. I believe the next speaker is going to talk about a 16-foot interior height. So if I stack 12, 13 plus 4, 5, as again I talked about earlier, and I have some drawings if you'd like to look at those now or later, I can leave this with you.
Mr. Chair, if I can respond. Again, the residential portion is a restriction. They can always build a higher and bigger hangar under the regular aircraft hangar requirements. Right. And basically, it puts in firewalls. It would put a 2-hour firewall between the unit and either property line if it's less than 30 feet. It wouldn't restrict the structure from setbacks under normal setback requirements, which is typically 5 feet. So it's just a matter of how it's constructed versus how you want it. Again, what the board looked at was a limitation on residential hangars, but you can still meet the regular hangar requirements and get the product you want.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would comment on that he's correct in that the higher requirements, I'm looking to get it built under R3 requirements, which is a 1-hour fire protection with 5/8 drywall. There is also germane to this is there's a county fire station located directly across from the airport property. It's 500 yards from the entrance to Antelope Drive, which the building that I'm going to submit plans on is located on. So they would be able to respond relatively quickly, much less than an hour. So that's why I'm looking for staying with R3 and 30 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Going to see if any of our commissioners have questions for Ms. Yock that was up here. Commissioner Morris, any questions?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Martin?
Yes, I do, and this is more for staff. I'm a little confused. In the ordinance that we're addressing, is it a residential aircraft hangar, or are we addressing aircraft hangars generally?
This is concerning a residential aircraft hangar. The proposed property that the gentleman is talking about with his plans is in an air park, which is where people live next to a runway and have airplanes that park in their airplane garage, which is a hangar.
Right, and the overall 20 height restriction would include the hangar and the residential that's included.
The change they're making, is from, I believe it was 30 foot?
30 to 25.
30-foot height, building height, not the hangar height, but building height. And the way they worded it, that means you can't build a hangar that's lower than that and add a second story, which is what this gentleman wants to do. His is also detached, and they have completely removed any different regulations for detached hangars. They just say, well, go look at the commercial. And the commercial, I understand, is a 30-foot setback. So it doesn't make sense to not have an option for detached, which has the residential requirement of an attached. Even if you make it a little bigger or a little taller, all of a sudden you go to a complete change. And it just didn't make sense to me to change it to building height. You could leave it at hangar height, because a hangar, yes, you're right, it won't be more than 20, is it changed to 25? 20? 25? The hangar height wouldn't be that, but if you put a second story on it, which other people have done, it becomes, building height becomes very restrictive. And the odd thing is all the discussions talks about RV garages, and you can have those as high as you want. And they can park a motorhome with 120 gallons of diesel fuel in it, and there seemed to be no problem with that. So it just doesn't make sense to me. It seems restrictive for no apparent reason. Did that answer your question?
No, I'm confused. We are addressing residential, or are we addressing commercial at the same time?
Mr. Chair.
They addressed residential restrictions, and they refer to, if you want anything different, you have to go to a commercial code and build according to the commercial code on your residential property.
Mr. Chair, if I could
So the
comment.
commercial code is allowed in the residential air park area?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
We're going to ask the staff to step in here. Just a moment. Commissioner Martin? Commissioner Martin, the staff has a comment they'd like to make.
Yeah, if I could comment, please. The building code regulates aircraft hangars. It doesn't necessarily say that they're commercial, but they do say there is a portion for exemptions for residential. So it's not a commercial standard they're meeting, it's a standard for aircraft hangars. The difference is, as I said, we had an amendment on the books, which was a detached hangar up to 5,000 square feet, and 5,000 square feet and 30 feet in height. We looked at that, and when most detached hangars are usually going to be 30 feet from a property line, usually of larger properties. And then if it wasn't, it basically, under the regular aircraft hangar portion, the wall that's less than 30 feet from the property line would have to be a 2-hour rated wall. Currently, the aircraft hangar separation from the residence requires a 1-hour wall. So it's basically a 1 hour more wall for the regular aircraft hangar portion of separation. So it's not it's if you use the residential, you're restricted to these heights and areas, but you can always build it bigger if you meet this other requirement of the aircraft hangars. And typically, it's a 2-hour wall instead of a 1-hour wall.
Okay. Commissioner Martin, does that answer your question?
So let me get right. You can use commercial and residential aircraft in the same area.
Would you repeat that again? You're breaking up.
You can do residential aircraft and commercial aircraft in the same area, as long as you're meeting the building code.
Did you get that? One more time, Commissioner Martin, you're fading in and out.
Okay, in the residential aircraft zoning, you can build commercial hangars as long as you meet the building code. So there's a mix of residential and commercial hangars.
Yes, and what they've done is they're changing the residential requirements to a smaller footprint and a smaller height, and saying if you don't fit within those guidelines and you're in residential, you have to abide by commercial standards. So if it's an attached hangar at a smaller height, it only has to have a 1-hour firewall, and if it's a detached, if it's a little bigger, you have to have a commercial 2-hour firewall.
But neither one of those are commercial.
Pertaining to the firewall.
Chairman, the building code regulates the fire separations based on if it's a regular hangar or if it's a residential hangar. Basically, if you think this way, we have a code that addresses just residential hangars, and there is a small exception in there for residential hangars. And it's not commercial. It's a matter of if you built a aircraft hangar, you have to comply with these requirements, which are more restrictive than the residential aircraft hangar. But it doesn't prohibit you from building it. It's just a matter of how the construction of the hangar is built.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a couple of points. One of which is that the building code regulates construction methods and means. So, when Mr. Smaby talks about commercial versus residential, that's the standards in the building code, and it would determine whether or not there's a residential exemption or it falls under the International Residential Code as opposed to the International Building Code. That's for the structure itself. The use that the structure is put to would be regulated by the zoning ordinance, and based on the zoning in this particular area, that use has to be residential, regardless of the standards the building is built to. That's number one. The other thing I'd like to point out is that any changes made in these ordinances, either the zoning ordinance or in this case the building code, apply to the county as a whole and not just to one area. So they're applicable county-wide. And that's, you know, a little bit of the danger when you have one area that's having a specific issue, whether or not that's an issue that is applicable county-wide or if it's something that's just experienced in one area.
Okay, thank you.
Can I address that?
Yeah, yes, please. Make it short, though, please.
Pointing out that one area has an issue, if you ask other air parks if they're building, I don't know if they're building, they may have the same issue, but the problem is we haven't had an issue until they decided to change it. Does that make sense? So things weren't causing problems. There weren't problems caused. There was no incident that created a need to make a change, and I don't understand why we're making the change if it hasn't been an issue, because that has presented us with an issue.
Okay.
And there may be other people in other areas, in other air parks in the county who would have the same issue. Like if they're building a house with a hangar, they may come to you and say, look, here it is. You say, no, we changed it, you can't do that anymore. And then it would be their issue. But we happen to have somebody who was in the process, had the plans already made, and this change is going to affect him. So, and I know that because I'm on the architecture committee for the air park.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any other questions for the speaker?
Can you answer the lady's question?
No? Okay, thank you. Move to the next speaker, Stan Gatewood.
Morning. Good morning. I'm Stan Gatewood. I live at 5193 South Antelope Drive, Fort Mojave. I live within the air park that we're talking about. I was at the August 26th meeting of the Building Code Advisory Board. And the main item that I was interested in was the 2,000 square feet versus 3,000 square feet. And I was pleased that we came up with a recommendation to go to 3,000 square feet. And at the beginning of this discussion, when Mr. Smaby summarized what's in the ordinance, he failed to leave out, or he didn't mention the point that I'm most concerned with. And that is, towards the end of the meeting, all of a sudden, they put in a statement that said it prohibits jet airplanes. We weren't prepared to talk about jet airplanes. We don't have any jet airplanes at the airport, but we might have someday. There was no real reason given for prohibiting jet airplanes other than there was a perception that jet fuel is dangerous and we don't want any jet fuel. Well, since then I've done some research and I'd like to point out a few things. Anywhere you look within the industry, I've searched online, I've looked in technical data, I've talked to numerous aviation people, airports, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, other air parks. Everybody you talk to says jet fuel is less dangerous than gasoline. Jet fuel is very similar to diesel fuel, which we allow all the time. The fact that we don't have any jet airplanes, we have to be careful. And what do we mean by a jet airplane? We do have some airplanes come and go that are turboprop airplanes. And a turboprop is an airplane that has a jet engine, but it has a propeller. So it looks just like an airplane with a propeller, but it uses jet fuel. And we could have one of those, they would want to put their airplane in the hangar. So why would we prevent that? Also there are diesel-powered airplanes, which use jet fuel. So jet fuel is becoming more and more popular, and anything throughout the industry proves that it's no more dangerous than gasoline. In fact, it's safer in many areas. So I'd like to see us not put in a brand new restriction that I don't think anywhere else in the country I can find they prohibit jet airplanes. So I'd like to request that we take out that portion.
Okay, thank you. Looking for questions for Mr. Gatewood, Commissioner Morris.
questions.
Commissioner Martin
No questions.
and Commissioner Abbott. Commissioners here, any questions?
I do.
Commissioner Joe?
I'm fairly new to this board, so I'm not aware that we normally approve this kind of thing. Is this in our purview?
Excuse me?
We approve the building code?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, the Arizona revised statutes state that the Board of Supervisors will receive a recommendation from the commission concerning amendments to the building, the adopted building codes.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Chairman, if I could clarify something. I did read Mr. Gatewood's letter. He did have some facts and figures in your packet. Staff does concur and would actually recommend a strikeout of the section of the code that said jet fuels or jet aircraft prohibited. So staff would stand behind that recommendation to mark that out on the proposed ordinance from the board.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Gatewood.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can we send this back to them for them to redo it? To change the,
I believe we have that option, yes.
we do have that option?
I'll question staff to make sure I'm right.
Members of the commission members, yes, you can refer it back with kind of statements of what's concerning you, and the staff and the Building Code Advisory will re-examine it. There are changes that are made cannot be so drastic that, the building code has basic statements in it. It has basic instructions in it. And although local government amendments, there is a method to do those, and they are acceptable to a point. That point is that whatever the local government does in the way of amendments cannot damage or negate the integrity of the code itself. So, and quite frankly, that would have to be an evaluation done by both staff and the Building Code Advisory Board itself once the commission's issues are stated.
Well, the reason that I say that is because I'm not sure that this board is the board that should be deciding the changes that apparently need to be made. The jet fuel being one, and the height being the second thing that seems to be a problem. And of course, the firewall. I have a very large RV garage that has a boat and 2 cars in it with lots of fuel. And I don't think I have any firewalls in those. My point being that I'm not too sure that the point that was made by one of the speakers, that engine fuel, gasoline, is no more dangerous than the jet fuel or the fuel that they use in their airplanes. So, and I don't feel qualified to make that decision.
Well, but you're dealing with 2 different entities.
Yes.
You're dealing with city and you're dealing with county, and they hardly ever match.
I see.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question for staff.
Commissioner Mill?
What is the largest hangar that is in this project? And the one that is proposed, how does it compare to the largest existing hangar?
Chairman, I believe the largest structure out there is 5,000 square feet. And again, this structure was built prior to our adoption of the international building codes. So it's probably, I would assume, 15 years old, more than that. The current proposal that brought this before the Code Advisory Committee was a proposal of a 24-foot height residential or aircraft hangar with it was 24 foot in height, and they wanted 2,400 square feet. So the code limited that to 2,000 square feet in size and 20 feet in height. So their proposal was to increase the height that would be reasonable and amend the codes for that. Mr. Walker's on the board. I'm not sure if he can speak or not. He was, he's part of the code advisory board. Maybe he could give some insight on what the board saw.
Exactly. We were looking at, these garages on houses are stacking 3 and 4, 2
Yeah.
boats and RVs and all the fuel. And I think some of the confusion is somebody talked about a detached hangar versus
And attached, yeah.
to the house. And I think that was part of the confusion we're having.
Yeah.
Because you can go 5,000 feet and square feet and 30-foot high detached, correct?
That's correct.
No, I think you guys are misreading that. I believe you still can't go 30 foot on a detached, correct?
That's correct.
You guys got that? You can go 30 foot on a detached height. So are we good with?
Right now, as current code, this county, being sought as a reduction. Right now, the current code for the county is 5,000 square feet and 30 feet. It's been in place for 15 years.
We're not changing that.
No, they want to reduce it. They want to go from 5,000 to 3,000 square feet, which I'm okay with.
No.
They also.
You're reading this wrong, I believe. Gilbert?
The redefinition of the residential garage would address increasing it to 3,000 square feet and 20 feet in height. Our recommendation is to eliminate the detached portion because you can build that. There's no restriction.
Still build the 5,000 square foot detached 30 foot high, correct?
Correct.
Yes, but I want to build it with R3 requirements, which is the same as the house. 1 hour firewall, 5H drywall, and being Antelope, we're within half a mile of the fire station.
How big of a hangar?
This one is 1,800 square feet floor footprint, but 2 stories.
And your issue's on the height?
My issue is about the height. I'd like to have R3 apply all the way to 30 feet, which is currently in the current county requirements. So let's make sure right now today for a detached building, it's 5,000 square feet and 30 feet.
I honestly think when we were talking about this at the code advisory we were just talking about a hangar. We weren't talking about anything on top of it. That never came up.
I think it was meant to be single story.
Yeah, we never talked about putting a second story on
Right.
top, and I don't know, Gilbert could talk better about that, and maybe even, I see Larry.
But they
Adams
exist. In the back of the package, you'll see photos of the agenda package. There's a letter there that I wrote. I attached some photos.
About if that would be.
But correct. The code basically says the maximum height of the hangar cannot exceed
So we could
25
put a
feet in
second
height.
story on top of the hangar as long as we meet
The-
ordinances?
It's up to interpretation of where the
height.
hangar stops and the structure starts again. In most of the cases I read was it limits it to a single story or the maximum height of the hangar itself. So that's something maybe that needs to come back to the code advisory board to take a look at.
Well, we have several 2-story buildings in the air park, and a few of them have hangars underneath and the first floor.
And again, those were built under the prior codes that we've adopted.
But it wouldn't be prevented under the current code.
It currently is not permitted under the current
There you
code.
go. That's what I want to continue with the current 30-foot height. Leave it alone at R3.
Is that something we'd have to kick back?
I believe at this time, yes.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I get back to my original question?
Yes.
The point I'm trying to make is, with staff, or for staff, if you pass this, trust me, someone down the line is going to throw a fit. Because you've got stuff that's already existing. That's not going to meet the current code. If you see my point.
Commissioner, I agree. There are stuff out there prior to code changes, and we have to accept those. The code's been changed for a reason. In this case, the code committees felt that not restricting residential hangars was a hazard. However, I don't have the code hearings, but I mean, people across the country made that decision for the code change. Again, we're looking at it we've increased it. So the board felt it was pretty restrictive, and they've increased the area and the size. And then it goes down to just where do we want it? So I think it's probably a recommendation to go back before the board, Code Advisory Board, for that discussion.
As where I'm just trying to foresee a legal issue 5, 10, 15 years on down the line.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, when Mojave County changes an ordinance and your building or your use all of a sudden doesn't fit those new rules,
it gets grandfathered in, yeah.
yeah, then it's considered non-conforming or grandfathered. And it's protected from any kind of enforcement action, et cetera, that the county might otherwise take on a new building.
Okay, thank you.
However, if you want to do something to that building, then those new codes are going to come into effect, correct?
Any, if you wish to add to your building or add to your use, the new rules apply and you must conform with them.
All right, thank you. Mr. Gatewood, did you have another comment?
No, it's just on maybe a minor detail, but the question was, so what's the largest hangar we have in our air park today? And I'm not sure what we said, but it's currently 4,200 square feet. There's a hangar that's 60 by 70 feet, but it's a little unique in that the property owner actually bought 2 lots and had them legally combined, so it's now one larger lot, and it's separate from the house. So it's a unique compared to the rest of the air park.
Okay, thank you.
For the rest of the air park, I think we have a couple of hangars that are 3,000 square feet or so, maybe.
And Chairman, if I can reiterate, there are, probably in the last 2 years, 3 years, we've had 2 or 3 hangars meeting the larger aircraft requirements. So they exceeded this residential exemption and just built it per the hangar requirements, which was the 2-hour walls. So we have the larger structures out there. They just, again, they constructed the structure differently to meet those.
Okay, thank you. Come back up to the mic, if you would, please.
There was a question about height. I know of one hangar height because the question was asked. It's 28 foot, I'm thinking 9 inches for the hangar height. I know of one, and I think there's another one that's at that high or higher. So whoever asked the question about current existing hangar heights, that would be great. The other thing I was concerned about is throwing out the whole thing when there were questions about certain ones. I mean, can they say, yes, we'll change section this, but not section this or something, or strike out part of, like they said, the jet fuel or the jet aircraft can be stricken from the changes? Can we do some of the changes and not all of them? I mean, you're just throwing it all back, or just the sections that you're concerned about?
I think there's going to be a discussion on how it gets reviewed. Okay. Thank you. Next speaker is James Lambert.
James Lambert, 5096 South Antelope Drive. I also own the airport across, and I am developing a subdivision. There'll be an additional air park in the area, or adjacent to the airport. The new subdivision has 1-acre lots, which will allow a little more spacing between. But I'm kind of perplexed why we have the arbitrary designation of commercial at one point when it's based on square footage rather than actual usage. We have a CC&Rs on both subdivisions that prohibit commercial activity. So it's just a matter of how many toys you want to put into your space. We have RV garages in other areas that are not 30 foot away from other homes. And those RVs can have 120 gallons of fuel, plus probably anywhere from 10 to 50 gallons of propane as a much stronger accelerant. And I'm wondering if they have 4-hour firewalls between them. So I'm glad to see that you're dropping the part about the jet fuel. We're hoping to get a higher, people with more money coming in to take advantage of our area. And we already have 3 or 4 turboprops that come in, although they don't live there at this point. As far as firewalls, if I could have the commercial hangars that I have on the airport side, I have a 14,720 square foot multiple unit hangar. It does not have firewalls in between. They also do not allow commercial activities, but the fact that the airplane is only stored there, we're not doing painting, we're not doing welding, they're not doing anything besides storing things, does not require that. It does have fire suppression, water sprinklers and those, although the last hangar I built was 45 by 60, and it did not even require fire sprinklers in it. It is detached, separate from everything else. But I think you need to look at the usage of these as much as the size.
Thank you very much. See if there's any questions for you. Commissioner Morris, any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Martin?
No question.
Any questions? Commissioner
I have a
Neal?
question, just because that I work in that area. Adjacent to the current air park.
Yes, sir.
Where are you going to be located?
If you're familiar with the area, then from between Joy Lane and El Rodeo Road, we just fenced in the area to keep the off-roaders off, but it's from Bison.
Okay.
From Bison over to the power lines at
East.
Okay. And then it goes to Joy Lane, but then from Bison and Hammer to Joy Lane, there's a 60-acre parcel in there that's joining with it. So we will also have another entrance to the park right across from the fire station. So.
Oh, okay. Off of Joy?
Off of Joy Lane, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Lyman.
Thank you.
Comment, Mr. Gatewood?
One last comment. We've been talking about 3 things here today. We've been talking about the square footage, the height, and the jet fuel. I think the jet fuel we've covered, and we're taking that out. We would really like to get on with the approval for the 3,000 square feet, because we have a property owner who's ready to build right now. He needs that part. He's not concerned about debating the height requirement. So if we're going to delay anything or go back to the drawing board, I'd like to have us go back on the height requirement and get on with the 3,000 square feet. And I think the property owner here is ready to talk about that. He needs that approval today or as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Next person we have is Jeff Pattern.
Yeah, Jeff Patton, 5296 Taxiway, Fort Mojave. We've been all over the board on this, so I came with a whole bunch of stuff ready to argue the jet fuel adamantly. There was a letter I think you guys got from AOPA. I'll leave it up here so you can learn more about the jet fuel. But the interesting thing, I watched the video from this meeting that we've been referring to here, that advisory board meeting. A whole bunch of the reason for what the county apparently wants to go, the direction they seem to be trying to go, is smaller, lower, and more setbacks on every lot. And most of that seemed to be based on the jet fuel and the issue, misunderstanding by the county and the misunderstanding by the fire marshal of how volatile the jet fuel is. So based on this whole discussion that came out of that video, decisions were made to make all this stuff shrink everything down and justify it all based on the jet fuel. Well, it's great we're throwing out the jet fuel, but the decisions were still based on this jet fuel being real volatile. And in fact, I've got so many notes because I'm crossing stuff out here left and right, trying to find where I'm at here. At I think 55 minutes and 15 seconds into the meeting, Gilbert, the county guy here, says the only issue for the building department is the fuel. And that's what he stated in there, was the jet fuel. That's the only issue for the safety and the size of the buildings and stuff. You can go back and review that if you would like. The county fire marshal that represents Golden Valley, I'm sure there's no airport in Golden Valley that I know of, but he was speaking and talking all about our hangars and stuff, and hangars in the area.
Sir, could you take off your mask so I could hear what you're saying? Thank you.
Sure. There you go. The fire marshal that represents Golden Valley, very, very small fire department, one-horse station up here. I don't even think they got an airport there at all. He was talking about the volatility of the fuels and that kind of stuff, and the requirements for why we have to keep the buildings small. In fact, he even went into the statement that these buildings, because part of the stuff going on here is reducing our setbacks, is that buildings fall over when they catch on fire. I'm a 30-year firefighter, worked in 3 different fire departments, 20 years at John Wayne Airport, firefighter, engineer, captain, many things there. And, you know, in all my 30 years of fire training, I've never participated in any training on being in a fire in a building that the building falls over on its side. So I think that's one of the things that we should that was part of all this, is these setbacks are getting smaller. The buildings need to be lower based on their idea here that these buildings are going to fall over when they catch on fire. They don't, they collapse in. No firefighter's ever been trained on being in a building that falls over on its side. So it's turning into requirements to make these buildings try to put themselves out, really, is what's talking about, 2-hour firewalls and all this stuff. And fire departments were made, you know, over 100 years ago, and the whole idea was to keep the whole city from burning down. That's why they were invented. Ben Franklin was one of those guys. It was to contain the whole, keep the cities from burning down. We have insurance to pay for damage. Everybody's required to have insurance. Our insurance would pay for damage of buildings that fall down on something else, but it'll never happen. Did you have a question, sir?
No, I just wanted to say we need to wrap it up if you would, please.
Yeah, well, it's a ton of stuff to cover here. I got information that backs up all the jet fuel thing. I think Stan brought up a point that you should probably go forward on the hangars, but we should go back and relook at all this stuff about the volatility that was the big concerns of the building official and the fire official. I can back up all the statements of volatility. They had a total misunderstanding when they went by that. And I couldn't argue that at any time. Absolutely, totally wrong on it. I couldn't be any further out to lunch on that.
Thank you. We'll see if there's any questions for you. Commissioner Morris, any question?
No, I don't have any questions of the applicant, but I've been listening to everything that's going on, and I'm a bit confused on one major issue, I believe, and that is the height of the hangar versus the height of the structure, which hasn't been defined in what I'm reading.
Any comments from the staff?
Commissioners, yes, the aircraft hangar portion restricts the height of the hangar. That's just how it's worded. Again, it could be up to interpretation of a hangar with a second story on top of it. It could be up to interpretation, but it does say the hangar maximum height.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Morris, any other questions?
I still think that leaves it ambiguous.
Sir, I just had one more comment. It's heard a couple of times here that virtually we don't even have a reason for a high hangar. Virtually every helicopter out there can't hardly fit in a 14-foot garage door. Most airplanes, you got to look at the tail height of them. So don't, when you're walking around, when you think these aren't very high, look at the tail height. We need that 14-foot doors, 12 minimum, and that's what causes all this stuff to happen. And we need our setbacks to stay short because we only have lots that are 100 by 150. You can do it with draw a picture. You can't fit a hangar, a house, and a garage and everything and still have 1,000,000 feet of setback.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Commissioner Martin, any questions?
Yes, I'm on the same page as Commissioner Morris. I want to clarify again, I understand the hangar height. So if we have a hangar with a bedroom on top of it, the combination cannot exceed 30 feet. Am I correct? The overall height restrictions of the structure, whether it's just a hangar or a hangar with a living quarters on it, cannot exceed 30 feet.
Staff.
Commissioners, the way the code is written, that the hangar maximum height currently for residential is 20 feet in height. The Code Advisory Board seeks amendment to make that 25 feet in height. It does not account for single or two-story structures. It just says maximum height.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Smabby, I believe that's for attached buildings, is that correct?
That is for both. Our amendment to the detached hangar limited it to 30 feet in height.
But you're confusing what's existing law, what's existing code versus what you're proposing.
Existing code currently is a restriction for residential aircraft hangars to be 20 feet in height and
Attached.
2,000 square feet.
Okay. I have
the amendment that we have made, and it currently is on the books, is for a detached hangar up to 5,000 square feet and 30 feet in height.
Right. And you're seeking to reduce on the detached hangar structure from 5,030 to 3,025. Is that correct?
That would be correct, yes.
I'm seeking that I'm okay with the 3,000 foot square footage, no problem. I want the height to remain at 30 feet, which in the last meeting you said was measured from the midpoint, from the peak to the eaves, which would allow higher than 30 feet, roughly 33. So I want it to stay at 30 feet and R3 requirements.
And again, the height of the building isn't going to have a fire requirement. Its side separations is what's actually looked at. So if they're less than 30 feet from a property line, they're requiring a firewall. Where currently, the residential code could go up to 5 feet and not require a firewall based on that area. So in all actuality, you could do the aircraft hangar portion, not the residential portion, and you could exceed the 25 feet in height. You could go up to 30 feet. I believe the zone allows 35 feet. You would just have to meet the regular aircraft hangar requirements for construction.
Right, and what I'm saying is we don't want to go beyond R3. We'll stay with a 1 hour burn protection. That's sufficient. I believe Jeff Patton here who mentioned that 1 hour with 5 feet, it's not going to fall, 5 foot setbacks, it's not going to fall out. They fall inward if there is a fire. So what I'm proposing is staying with the 30-foot height R3 requirement for the detached hangar.
See, and I do believe the code addresses that of the separation. It currently has in there a separation from the house to the hangar if it's under those parameters of a 1 hour wall. If you exceed those parameters and have a larger hangar, it requires a 2 hour wall. So it's a safety factor as the hangar starts increasing in size, is what it is.
I'm okay with the 1 hour requirement.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments for Mr. Patton? No. Any commissioners that have any comments? Okay, or questions? Okay. Move forward with Larry Adams.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Larry Adams, 2007 Highway 95, Bullhead City, Arizona. On behalf of my client, I'm the original applicant for this amendment, and I would like to thank the advisory board, building advisory board, for the cooperation, and the Bullhead or the building department for the cooperation we've received. We think they put together a very reasonable proposal that we're happy with, and they were very, very cooperative. They made a good recommendation. We're pleased with that. We are the applicant. If some people want to amend it from where we are now, they can appeal it and have their own hearing. But we as original applicants are very appreciative of what the county's done for us, the cooperation we've received, and we're in full agreement with the proposal, and I sure urge you to pass it as is. And I'll answer any questions you might have if I can.
Thank you. Commissioner Morris, any questions?
No questions.
Commissioner Martin?
No questions.
Any questions on the?
I do. I have a question.
Commissioner
So the
Black?
application that you put in is for an attached or detached?
It's attached.
Attached.
So they address those concerns very, very reasonably, and we're very pleased with that.
So the board decided to also do the detached?
Pardon?
So the board decided to also do the detached?
No, Gilbert?
Commissioner, if I can answer that.
It depends on what they build.
It depends on what they build. If you're over if you're over the 3,000 limit that we presented, and if you're less than 30 feet from a property line, you will be required to have a 2-hour wall. If you're not up to 30 feet from a property line, the construction can be no firewalls, like any normal construction.
My point is that the gentleman who made the application is applying for an attached hangar. But in the process of doing the attached hangar, you also did the detached hangar.
That is correct. We looked at that, and it is part of the definition of a residential aircraft hangar. In redefining that and changing the parameters of size and area, it was taking the 5,000 square foot out. It doesn't. The only thing it's doing is saying if it's less than 5,000, if it's less than 30 feet from a property line, it requires a firewall. So staff felt that was, and actually the fire department felt that was something that should be addressed that wasn't originally addressed at the board.
Well, I actually agree that if it's if you're setting it next to the property line, which is the 5 feet setback, that another person could come along on the other property and build a building 5 feet back, making only 10 feet between the hangar and the building.
That is correct.
So I totally understand the firewall in that particular instance, but it seems as though there were also other changes, like the 30 feet setback was removed from the detached. Is that correct? The height.
The regular aircraft hangar requirement requires a firewall if it's less than 30 feet from a property line.
Okay.
The exemption on residential doesn't require that firewall. So that size limit of the residential would have no firewall, but the minute you exceed that size, you'd have to have fire protection from property line.
So if you attach a hangar to your home, there is no firewall between the hangar and the home?
No, the code does require a 1-hour firewall between the residence and the hangar.
It does require?
It does, yes.
Okay. All right, then I'm still, I think, I was a builder for years, and I'm still confused by this, but I never built any hangars.
Any other questions for Mr. Adams? Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Craig Nahr.
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Nahr. I live at 21406 Ladine Avenue in Torrance, California. But I am building a property on Sun Valley Air Park at 5144 Antelope Drive in Fort Mojave. Larry and I are the original applicants for this proposal, and the difference is, as the code is written that we want to change, if you have, regarding a residential hangar, it can be up to 2,000 square feet and 20 feet high, and it can be built to residential standards, which is a 1-hour firewall, which is similar to your RV garage, I would suppose. If you go larger than that, even by 500 square feet, automatically you go into commercial building standards, which includes the necessary firewall requirements if you wanted to paint hangars, if you want to do major aviation maintenance and things of this nature. So what we are wanting to build on our lot is a simple family home with a 2-car garage and a 50 by 50 aircraft hangar, which is 2,500 square feet. So what we did is we proposed this to the building commission, and we compared it to an RV garage, and there's no commercial applications, and so we all came to agreement to go with 2,500 square feet with a 20-foot roof, building height, I should say. To answer your question regarding the size of the roof inside of the hangar, the ceiling will be 16 feet. The outside structure, I believe, is 21 feet because of the gable. And then on top of that, since we're building it to be a Pueblo-style house, there's a little 2-foot decorative with little Vegas and stuff like that. That's where 25 feet came from. And that's what I would like to do, is just carry forward with the building commission's approval and go forward with that and build our home, which we've been delaying for a while to try to get this requirement through.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Nahr? Start with Commissioner Morris.
No questions.
Commissioner Martin.
No question.
Any from our commissioners here? No? Thank you much, Mr. Nahr. Appreciate it. Any other comments from any of the commissioners here?
I have a question for staff.
Okay.
Gosh, it's very confusing, but bottom line, since we were willing to strike the jet fuel situation, does this need to go back to at least staff to redo this before we vote on this document? Or do we vote addressing those issues?
Okay.
Or make a motion to address the jet fuel issue? To me, I'm still somewhat of the opinion that maybe it needs to go back to the other commission for further discussion and talk. But, so I'm kind of wondering where we are at this point. What would be the best, cleanest action for everybody? For one thing, I hear this person building something, and he needs to have the codes to help him build. And then I hear the applicant saying that he needs certain codes to build the way he wants to build. That's a little concerning to me, or maybe I'm just misunderstanding. But I, as a planning and zoning commissioner, I would rather see it go back to this committee first for clearing it up and maybe giving them a chance to speak to the issues that they felt that they didn't get to have.
Okay, thank you. We have one more speaker that I just received.
Well, I'd like to get staff's input to my question.
Okay, staff input as to what Commissioner Alexander was discussing.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, okay, my understanding is we are striking there's no reference to fuel type in the proposed amendment.
Or jet aircraft.
Yeah, there's no reference to either aircraft type or fuel type.
Proposed ordinance
You'd strike that phrase, jet aircraft not included. Okay, so that would be one amendment, if the commission approves that today, and you didn't want to include either fuel type or aircraft type, that phrase would need to be struck in anyone's motion. Now, Gilbert, can you go through the changes that are being made? It's only being made to the residential exemption, and kind of cover height, any setbacks, and area. What's the change in the area, what's the change in the height, and whether or not there's a change in any setbacks, if you wouldn't mind.
So staff's proposal is to amend the definitions. I had it here somewhere. Here. So International Residential Code 202 for definitions currently read, amend and add new definition, residential aircraft hangar, comma, a detached accessory building no greater than 5,000 square feet or 30 feet in building height, constructed on a one or two family residential property where aircraft are stored. Such use will be considered as a residential accessory use incidental to the dwelling. So basically that was a definition of a residential aircraft hangar in the residential code.
Detached.
We actually are proposing to strike that complete definition out and go over into the International Building Code. And the International Building Code, Section 202 of definitions, also had that exact same verbiage. So our proposal is to put in the International Building Code, amend to read, an accessory building not less than 3,000 square feet and 20 feet in building height, constructed on a one and two family property where aircraft are stored, jet airplanes excluded. Such use will be considered as a residential accessory use incidental to the building. Okay. Again, staff recommends that we mark out jet aircraft excluded. That would take care of the jet fuel and aircraft. Also, Section 412, which is the actual residential exemption in the building code under the aircraft hangar section, we want it to read, height and area limits, amend to read, residential aircraft hangars shall not be greater than 3,000 square feet and in area and 25 feet in building height. So basically we're taking a definition out of the residential code, which it really shouldn't even be there because the definition of aircraft hangars are in the International Building Code. So we're putting the definition in the International Building Code, and we're changing that height and area restriction as in the part of the residential aircraft hangar. And that's what was presented to the Building Code Advisory Board, and that was their recommendations before you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. We do have one more speaker, Joe Finazio.
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Joe Finazzo, 5049 South Antelope Drive. I recently just built a hangar there, so I want you to go over the code again, what it is for an attached hangar that's 3,000 square feet to a house. What's the fire code on that?
The fire code does not regulate structures, the International Building Code does.
What is the fire code you impose on the people that build there?
We required a 2-hour separation because they exceeded the 2,000 square foot size limit and the 20 foot in height.
And it's in nothing other than the International Building Code, which has nothing to do with the hangars there that are in a residential air park. If you check around this state, you will find nobody goes by that. So I was forced to do that. Because of that, we got stalled 2 months. My wife never got to see the house. She died. So you need to look at your codes and start going realistic and start getting them like an RV garage where you can have it a 1 hour burn and you can have any size you want pretty much.
Commissioner, if I can respond to that. Staff did, actually, that was a major concern of the board. And to say that we're not the only ones, I solicited Coconino County, Yuma County, Kingman City, Yavapai, Yuma, all the other counties have not changed this code. We looked at it, and the board actually made recommendations to increase those size limits. So, you know, we did look at that, and they wanted it more uniform with what an RV garage would be. And I think they made the compromise of those size limits. At the time Mr. Fazio's garage was being constructed, those provisions weren't in the code. He was held to the 2,000 square foot limit and the 20 foot in height. So he built his hangar under those other requirements, under the outside of the residential hangar requirements.
Which you approved until we were almost done, and then you changed.
You created a 1 hour firewall when a 2 hour firewall was required.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the speaker, Commissioner Morris?
No questions.
Commissioner Martin?
No question.
Any questions here? No? Thank you. Any other comments from commissioners? Maybe
Yeah, I have a
Commissioner Walker.
for staff. I mean, with what we did and what's in front of us, I mean, can we strike the jet fuel, jet plane, run it through today, see if it passes, and then can we bring the building code advisory back to discuss heights? Because the height doesn't affect the NARS who originally originated this request. And I mean, they've been sitting idle for months. Is there any way we can let this go today and let's set a meeting for the building code advisory? And everybody needs to realize the building code advisory meets on request. When, you know, we don't have set meetings. I think we have one meeting a year that's set. Other than that, we come in when we're asked to come in.
Commissioner Walker and Chairman, yes, you can. We could strike that jet fuel out of the current proposal, and we can bring this, or have an applicant or something bring it back for the Code Advisory Board for discussion.
Would that make you guys happy?
We recognize you're the lawmaking authority, so I would state that we would go with a 30-foot now, and then when it goes back through code review and comes back to you, you'll vote on that, whether you want to reduce it to 25 feet or not. Restricting it 25 feet now, I have no idea when that's going to come through, because I'm the only one that's pushing for this. I don't know how many, maybe Joe is too, but I would say go with the 30-foot height and the 3,000 square foot and accommodate our person that's attempting to get building underway. And then, as you say, if you wish to continue and then later reduce it to 25 feet, you can do that. But limiting it now, remember, the current county code is 5,000 for detached is 5,030 feet. The proposal is to reduce that down to 25 feet and 3,000. So I would say leave it. I'm okay with the 3,000 square foot. Leave it at 30 feet height, and then if you want to come back and visit reducing it to 25, we can have that discussion at the code meeting.
Thank you. Ma'am? Ms. Ock?
If you're looking, Alan Ock, if you're looking for a simple way to pass something that will make everybody happy and then to revisit later, the one thing that was stricken that doesn't affect Mr. Narr's proposal, I believe, is the IBC, which defines detached accessory buildings. And they struck that. That one allows 5,000 square feet and 30 feet in building height, constructed on a 1 or 2 family residential property where aircraft are stored. If he can use that section that they have stricken, I don't know why, he will be satisfied. If you continue to use the accessory building that's attached as the 3,000 square feet and 25-foot height, Mr. Nar will be satisfied. So if we continue with the amendments, but not the deletion of the detached definition, I think you can satisfy both parties.
Thank you.
Question?
Thank you. Commissioner Walker, are you willing to make a motion that move forward?
I'd like to ask the building official what he thinks of that. I mean,
We specifically looked at the 5,000 square feet. Again, I was staff at that time, but not in a management position when that went through. There was discussions of that large of a structure being 5 feet from a property line and also being an aircraft hangar. I think I presented to the board the size of that structure. This auditorium is 17 feet high. Okay, from this podium to that wall, from this wall to that wall is 3,000 square feet. If you took the entire chambers, it's 4,700 feet. So that size of a structure, 5 feet from a property line, we did not like. The Fire Marshals Association didn't like. So that was one we felt that should be, I won't say eliminated from the code, but it should have to click into some type of fire requirements to be that close. The argument was brought up, what about RV garages? Okay, we're getting those more and more. Again, when these codes was probably written, we didn't have those size of those garages. They just came in the last probably 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. Okay, so in some cases, between fire and buildings, I think we need to start looking at setback requirements for those type structures because they're getting larger and larger. And like you said, the fuel loading and the fuel amount now in those, you're not having just the station wagon in the car. You're having, a boat with 400 gallons of gasoline. You're having all kinds of toys and stuff that is almost as volatile as an aircraft. The other part during my research was the other aspect of aircraft they're quite expensive. And so a lot of the insurance industries were looking and actually backing the code requirements for smaller hangars because of the loss if something happens. And like in this air park, even though this air park's they've got small properties. And I don't believe you'll ever see another air park that'll be that small of properties. In fact, the next phase of the project are, I believe, acre lots or half-acre lots. So they don't come into a high-density type construction through that. So, I mean, that's my recommendation is on the 5,000 is you can have them and it's there, but you're going to have a firewall if they're less than 30 feet.
yeah. Okay. Well, I would like to make a motion to approve item 9 with staff recommendations that we've talked about, striking jet fuel, and raising to 30-foot building height.
I have a motion by Commissioner Walker. Do we have a second? Was that Commissioner Morris?
Yes.
So we have a second from Commissioner Morris. Any discussions on this particular item?
I just have one question.
Commissioner Gillette?
On the jet fuel, should we put jet aircraft and fuel?
Yes, I'd say put both of them in.
Yeah.
Okay. Any? We're in the process of motion right now.
Yeah, striking both jet airplane, jet fuel, anything that would restrict it.
Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
Now, I believe that with that motion, we allowed these gentlemen to do what they want to do. Is that correct?
All right.
Yeah.
Brings us to item 8, monthly reports. Any comments on monthly reports?
Commissioner,
Yes.
Commissioner, if I could have a minute. We still had three other items that were on my amendments. I don't know if those need to be voted on or correct, council?
No, there was.
Okay. Okay, so our third amendment would be the amends the permit exemption for block walls up to 7 feet in height. Again, the Building Code Advisory Board recommended that to be exempt from building permits.
I'll make a motion to exempt block walls and fences up to 7 feet.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Walker, a second by Commissioner Gillette. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The fourth item on the agenda was repeals and replace Mojave County Ordinance 2018-06 with the current ordinance 2020-04. This would be the Mojave County Building Ordinance.
Do I have a motion? Any discussions?
If I can just clarify the motion, when Commissioner Walker made his original motion, he stated that he was going to go with the staff recommendations with the exception of striking the jet air and fuel and then raising to the 30-foot building height. I believe that encompasses the ordinance and the proposals that we are putting into place. I don't believe we need separate motions for each section of the ordinance because of the way Commissioner Walker stated it.
That sounds good to me.
Is that an agreement? Or, Bob, is that okay?
That would be
That was how I wrote it and heard it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So we're finished with item number 8. Item 9. That takes us to monthly reports. Do we have any monthly reports that we need to discuss? No.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, members of the commission, the monthly reports are done and should have been sent to you yesterday. I was looking at them and got distracted by another issue and never got back to them. So we'll be sending them out to you as soon as we get back to the office.
Okay, thank you. Item 11, commissioner comments limited to announcements, availability, attendance at conferences and seminars, requests for agenda items for future meetings, and requests for reports from staff. Do we have any of those? Hearing none, move to item 12, call to the public. Public has pretty much vanished.
He's gone.
They're gone.
Everybody left us.
So with that, call for a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
How come every time something comes up